Got it. Let me begin with a brief introduction that we had read about 10 pages so far of this very important tract, Philosophy of Hinduism, and today we are going to go deeper into it. So we are going to go for next 10 pages, and we will follow the same sort of a course of action. And I would intervene in between, and then we will have a discussion, throw some light here and there on some ideas, and then we will discuss as and when required. So I request Shashank to please carry on with reading.
Yeah, thank you, sir. To begin with, the comparison between savage society and civilized society. In the religion of the savage one, is struck by the presence of the two things. First is the performance of rites and ceremonies, the practice of magic or taboo, and the worship of fetish or totem. The second thing that is noticeable is that the rites, ceremonies, magic, taboo, totem, and fetish are conspicuous by their connection with certain occasions. These occasions are chiefly those which represent the crisis of human life. The events such as birth, the birth of the firstborn, attaining manhood, reaching puberty, marriage, death, and war are the usual occasions which are marked out for the performance of rites and ceremonies, the use of magic, and the worship of the totem. Students of the origin and history of religion have sought to explain the origin and substance of religion by reference to either magic, taboo, and totem, and the rites and ceremonies connected therewith, and have deemed the occasions with which they are connected as of no account. Consequently, we have theories explaining the religion as having arisen in magic or as having arisen in fetishism. Nothing can be a greater error than this. It is true that the savage society practices magic, believes in taboo, and worships the totem. But it is wrong to suppose that these constitute the religion or form the source of religion. To take such a view is to elevate what is incidental to the position of the principle. The principal thing in the religion of the savage are the elemental facts of human existence, such as life, death, birth, marriage, etc. Magic, taboo, totem are things which are incidental. Magic, taboo, totem, fetish, etc. are not the ends. They are only the means. The end is life and the preservation of life. Magic, taboo, etc. are resorted to by the savage society, not for their own sake, but to conserve life and to exercise evil influences from doing harm to life. Thus understood, the religion of the savage society was concerned with life and the preservation of life. And it is this life processes which the substance and the source of the religion of the savage society. So great was the concern of the savage society for life and the preservation of life that it made them the basis of its religion. So central were the life processes in the religion of the savage society that everything which affected them became part of its religion. The ceremonies of the savage society were not only concerned with the events of the birth, attaining of manhood, puberty, marriage, sickness, death, and war, they were also concerned with food. Among pastoral people, the flocks and herds are sacred. Among agricultural people, seed time and harvest are marked by ceremonial perform with some references to the growth and the preservation of the crops. Likewise, drought, pestilence, and the other strange irregular phenomena of nature occasion the performance of ceremonials. Why should such occasions as harvest and famine be accompanied by religious ceremonies? Why is magic, taboo, totem be of such importance to the savage? The only answer is that they all affect the preservation of life. The process of life and its preservation form the main purpose. Life and the preservation of life is the core and center of the religion of the savage society. As pointed out by the Professor Crowley, the religion of the savage begins and ends with the affirmation and conservation of life.
So we will stop here, and we will reflect on these comparisons that Baba Saheb Ambedkar has tried to make between a savage society and civilized society. So it doesn't mean that one society is superior to another society. What Baba Saheb Ambedkar is trying to say that whatever the rites, ceremonies, magic, taboo, totem, and fetish, they were not existing for the sake of just existence, but they were related to what Baba Saheb Ambedkar has called here the life and the preservation of life. So the principal element of the religions of the savage society was the life and the preservation of life, while some of the anthropologists had made an error in thinking that the rites, ceremonies, magic, taboo, totem, and fetish are the central elements of the religion's life. Ultimately, these elements are connected with the important processes in the human life. For example, birth, death, marriage, attaining puberty, manhood, so on and so forth. So that's a very clear point that when we study the religion of the savage society, we have to look at it from the centrality of life and the life processes, not from the centrality of the rituals, ceremonies, rites, and the taboo and fetish that they had. And I think one of the things that we can look here is about the pastoral people. So those people who were practicing the animal rearing and so on and so forth, the pastoral people, they had this food, like in terms of flocks and herd, were considered to be sacred. Among the agricultural people, the seed time, the harvest are marked by ceremonial performed with some reference to growth and the preservation of the crop. Now you see all these so-called festivals in India, like they coincide with the agriculture cycle everywhere, all over the places. So they are like the form of the continuation of the savage society that practiced religions in the form of rites, rituals, ceremonies, fetish, totems, so on and so forth. And even we see it continuing today, like the festival of Onam, Pongal, Diwali, and Pola, the bullock worship festival, and so on and so forth. So what Baba Saheb Ambedkar is saying, why is magic, taboo, totem be of such importance to the savage? The only answer is that they all affect the preservation of life. So as a human being, the worst fear we have is the fear of life. And therefore, the preservation of life was considered to be the most central of even the religion of the savage people. And life and preservation of life is the core and the center of the religion of the savage society. I think this is a very interesting point, because otherwise anthropologists argue that the magic, rites, rituals, the totem are the central or the core and the center of the savage society. It is not so. It is the life and the preservation of life. So that's a very interesting sort of insight that we have to bear in mind as we read on, or, if anybody would like to comment, they can. If there is any student of sociology or anthropology, they would like to comment, because the anthropology and sociology is all about studying this phenomena. If not, then we can go on reading. If there are any comments to be made, please, the floor is open.
So I will continue.
Yes, Shashank.
In life and preservation of life consist of religion of the savage. What is, however, true of the religion of the savage is true of all religions, wherever they are found, for the simple reason that constitutes the essence of the religion. It is true that in present day society, with its theological refinements, this essence of religion has become hidden from view and is even forgotten. That life and the preservation of life constitute the essence of religion, even in the present day society, is beyond question. This is well illustrated by the Professor Crowley. When speaking of the religion life of a man in the present day society, he says how? A man's religion does not enter into his professional or social hours, his scientific or artistic moments. Practically, its chief claims are settled on one day in the week from which ordinary worldly concerns are excluded. In fact, his life is in two parts, but the moiety with which religion is concerned is the elemental. Serious thinking on the ultimate questions of life and death is, roughly speaking, the essence of his Sabbath. Add to this the habit of prayer, giving the thanks at meals, and the subconscious feeling that birth and death, continuation and marriage are rightly solemnized by religion, while business and the pleasure may possibly consecrate it, but only metaphorically or by an overflow of religious feeling. Comparing this description of the religious concerns of the man in the present day society with that of the savage, who can deny that the religion is essentially the same both in theory and practice, whether one speaks of the religion of the savage society or of the civilized society? It is therefore clear that the savage and the civilized societies agree in one respect. In both the central interests of the religion, namely in the life processes by which individuals are preserved and the race maintained, are the same. In this, there is no real difference between the two, but they differ in two other important respects. In the first place, in the religion of the savage society, there is no trace of the idea of God. In the second place, in the religion of the savage society, there is no bond between morality and religion. In the savage society, there is religion without God. In the savage society, there is morality, but it is independent of religion. How and when the idea of God became fused in religion, it is not possible to say. It may be that the idea of God had its origin in the worship of the great man in society, the hero, giving rise to theism with its faith in its living God. It may be said that the idea of God came into existence as a result of the purely philosophical speculation upon the problem as to who created life, giving rise to Deism with its belief in God as architect of the universe. In any case, the idea of God is not integral to religion. How it got fused into religion, it is difficult to explain. With regard to the relation between religion and morality, this much may be safely said. Though the relation between God and religion is not quite integral, the relation between religion and morality is. Both religion and morality are connected with the same elemental facts of human existence, namely life, death, birth, and marriage. Religion consecrates these life processes, while morality furnishes rules for their preservation. Religion, in consecrating the elemental facts and processes of life, came to consecrate also the rules laid down by society for their preservation. Looked at from this point, it is easily explained why the bond between religion and morality took place. It was more intimate and more natural than the bond between religion and God. But when exactly this fusion between religion and morality took place, it is not easy to say.
We'll stop here. I think what Baba Ambedkar is trying to establish here is a kind of the history of the humankind, the history of the mankind, the kind of the anthropological view of the human sort of, I won't say progress, the human history, we can say. And here, when he talks about the comparison between the savage society and the civilized society that we consider that we are living today, there is a very interesting sort of a remark given by Professor Crawley, which Baba Ambedkar has quoted here, that the religion is still concerned with the life and the preservation of life. And on the Sabbath or on Sunday or on certain religious day, the people in different religions talk about, they discuss about the ultimate serious questions of life and death. For example, in Buddhism talks about the question of life and death. All religions, major religions, talks about the question of life and death, and so on and so forth. But still, the subconscious feeling that birth and death, continuation and marriage are rightly solemnized by religion. So he's still concerned with the basic facts of the life and the preservation of life. And I think that is a remarkable point, that the business and the pleasure, they don't come in the domain of religious feeling. So comparing this to this description, Baba Ambedkar says that the religion is essentially the same for the savage society and for the civilized society. Is the same, both in theory and practice, whether one speaks of religion of the savage society and one speaks of religion of the civilized society. So there is no difference between the two. But the savage society and the civilized society differ on two important aspects, two important respects. And I think this is very crucial. The first place is in the religion of the savage society. There is no trace of the idea of God. So there is no concept of the idea of God, God with capital G, the big God. There is no concept of that. In the second place, in the religion of the savage society, there is no bond between morality and religion. Very interesting point. In the savage society, there is a religion without God. In the savage society, there is morality, but it is independent of religion. So Baba Ambedkar is thinking about how the concept of God might have emerged in the civilized society. And he says that the concept of the God might have emerged from the worship of great man. Because, in every society, there are great people. In every society, there are, heroic people. And looking at them, Baba Ambedkar is saying that the concept of God might have come into being. And another reason that might have given rise to the idea of God might be philosophical speculation about who created the life. And those people who believe that God created life is called deist. Who created life is called the theism, theists. So theists are the people who believe that the God created the world. And, the theists believe in the concept of the living God, faith in the living God, and the deist, because, these two concepts are very important. For example, the American founders believed in deism. They believe that the God created the world and the God has no business to do now with the world. He is the architect and his work is over. So the founding fathers of America, like Thomas Jefferson and all, they called themselves deist. They didn't declare themselves as theist. Okay, so they didn't believe in theism. They believe in what is called a deism. Okay, so deism means belief in God as architect of the universe. And theism entails that we have to have faith in the living God. So this is what Baba Ambedkar is discussing about the emergence of God. The two sort of things. One is philosophical speculation about who created the world, and one emerged out of the worship of the great man. So worship of the great man leads to the concept of the living God, which we call theism. And we know that there are theistic religions. And then deism, which believes that the God is the architect of the universe. So, in any case, the idea of God is not integral to religion. How it got fused into religion, it is difficult to explain. With regard to religion and morality, Baba Sahib says that the relation between God and both the religion and morality are connected with the same elemental facts of human existence. So there are some elemental facts of the human existence, like, as we have seen, life, death, birth, and marriage. And the religion plays a role in that, because the religion in all the societies have consecrated these life processes like death, life, birth, and marriage. And then Baba Sahib Ambedkar goes on saying that the religion and morality has come together, has been bonded together based on the life processes that we all experience. But he is not sure as to when the fusion between the religion and morality took place. It is not easy to say. Okay, little bit difficult chapter, but I think this background of the history of religion is very essential in order to construe the idea of the philosophy of religion. And therefore, I think we should bear these concepts in mind, like the concepts of savage society, the concept of civilized society. What was the savage society like? What is the civil society like? What are the elemental things of the religion in the savage society? The elemental thing is the same: life and the preservation of life. Okay, so now what is the relationship between the religion and God, and what is the relationship between the religion and morality? That is a very important question that Baba Sahib Ambedkar has raised when it comes to the civilized society, because in the savage society that was not an issue. So anybody would like to share? Anybody would like to comment before we go on further?
I think one more sentence is very important.
Sir.
Though the relation between God and religion are not quite integrated, the relation between religion and morality is.
Yes.
This is also very important thing.
Very important.
What Baba Sahib said, though the relation between God and religion is not quite integral,
yes,
the relation between religion and morality is.
Very, very profound.
So this only I wanted to point out.
Very, very good. Very good.
Okay.
So if not, we will go on and we will come back again to the previous pages. Okay, to clarify things further.
Okay, sure.
Go on.
Be that as it may, the fact remains that the religion of the civilized society differs from that of the savage society into two important features. In civilized society, God comes into the scheme of religion. In civilized society, morality becomes sanctified by religion.
This is exactly the point that Venu Anna was making. And I think these two sentences are very important for us to bear in mind as we discuss further. Go on.
Absolutely. This is the first stage in the religious revolution I'm speaking of. This religious revolution must not be supposed to have been ended here with the emergence of these two new features in the development of religion. The two ideas have become part of the constitution of the religion of the civilized society, have undergone further changes, which have revolutionized their meaning and their moral significance. Second stage of the religious revolution marks a very radical change. The contrast is so big that civilized society has become split into two: antique society and modern society. So that instead of speaking of the religion of the civilized society, it becomes necessary to speak of the religion of antique society as against the religion of the modern society. The religious revolution which marks off antique society from modern society is far greater than the religious revolution which divides savage society from civilized society. Its dimensions will be obvious from the differences it has brought about in the conceptions regarding the relations between God, society, and man. The first point of difference relates to the composition of society. Every human being, without choice on his own part, but simply in virtue of his birth and upbringing, becomes a member of what we call a natural society. He belongs to, that is, to a certain family and a certain nation. This membership lays upon him definite obligation and duties which he is called upon to fulfill as a matter of course and on pain of social penalties and disabilities, while at the same time it confers upon him certain social rights and advantages. In this respect of the ancient society, ancient and modern world are alike. But in the words of Professor Smith, there is this important difference that the tribal or national societies of the ancient world were not strictly natural in the modern sense of the word, for the gods had their part and place in them equally with men. The circle into which a man was born was not simply a group of kinsfolk and fellow citizens, but embraced also certain divine beings, the gods of the family and of the state, which to the ancient mind were as much a part of particular community with which they stood connected as the human members of the social circle. The relation between the gods of antiquity and their worshippers was expressed in the language of human relationship. And this language was not taken in a figurative sense, but with strict literality. If a god was spoken of as a father and his worshippers as his offsprings, the meaning was that the worshippers were literally of his stock, that he and they made up one natural family with reciprocal family duties to one another. Or again, if the god was addressed as king and worshippers called themselves his servants, they mean that the supreme guidance of the state was actually in his hands. And accordingly, the organization of the state included provision for consulting his will and obtaining his direction in all weighty matters. Also provision for approaching him as king with due homage and tribute. Thus, a man was born into a fixed relation to certain gods as surely as he was born into relation to his fellow man. And his religion, that is the part of conduct which was determined by his relation to the gods, was simply one side of the general scheme of conduct prescribed for him by his position as a member of society. There was no separation between the spheres of religion and of ordinary life. Every social act had a reference to the gods as well as to men. For social body was not made up of men only, but of gods and men. Thus, in ancient society, men and their gods formed a social and political as well as religious whole. Religion was founded on a kinship between the god and his worshippers. Modern society has eliminated God from its composition. It consists of men only.
Okay. I think this particular section that we are reading, it solves a lot of our problems that we were facing in understanding the concept of religious revolution, because Babasaheb Ambedkar is employing the method of revolution to understand the philosophy of religion. And we have seen that in the beginning of the tract, he has employed the sort of two revolution. He has implied and hinted at two revolution, the Copernican revolution and the Darwinian revolution, as to how they caused the revolution in the religion. And now here he is talking about the historical revolutions that have taken place within the religions. So he is defining the savage society, and then he is defining the civilized society. And he's saying that there is a revolution that has shifted the savage society to the civilized society. And then he says that even the civilized society has two sort of aspect. One in the beginning was what he called ancient society or antiquated society, and another the modern society. And he says that the rupture between the antique society and the modern society is very revolutionary. And that's what he's talking about in these paragraphs, quoting Professor Smith. He's saying that when we have the natural society, now natural means natural related to one's birth. We say the citizen by naturalization, by birth. So when we are born in a particular community or in a tribe, then automatically we are the part of that tribe or that caste or whatever that group is, by virtue of our birth into that particular group of people. And then he says that with that comes several obligations, several rights, and then we become the God. We start relating with the God of the tribe, of that particular natural society, where whatever the God there is. And if the God is considered in that tribe as a father figure, then all the people become the sons of the God. And if that God is treated as a king, then all the people become subject of that God, and all the human relationships are mediated through this mechanism of God in the antique society. That's what Baba Ambedkar is saying. And then he's saying that this particular aspect, that the God, in the ancient society, men and their gods form a social and political as well as religious whole. So you couldn't separate the gods worshipped in your community from your life. They become the part and parcel of your own life. They become the part and parcel of your whole social life and your political life, even to the extent economic life. So religion was founded on kinship between God and his worshipper. But in the modern society, the revolution has taken place. But in the modern society, what has happened is the God has been eliminated, and the modern society only consists of men, of human being, of the people. And I think this is very, very interesting. This revolution within the religions, with this revolution in the religious sphere, the two revolution, the one revolution that separated the savage society from the civilized society, and in the civilized society, the antique society and the modern society, there was a rupture, and that revolutionary rupture, Baba Ambedkar is saying that in the antique society, the God was the center, because the God used to govern the relationship between the people born in that natural society. Natural means related to birth, native, like that. And the modern society has eliminated the God from its composition. It only consists of men. Anything there on this first point of difference? Any comment on this first part of the difference? I think it is becoming more self-explanatory as we are moving on, right?
Absolutely.
Yes, we can go ahead.
Yeah.
Go on, read.
Yeah. The second point of difference between antique and modern society relates to the bond between God and society. In the antique world, the various communities believed in the existence of many gods, for they accepted as real the gods of their enemies as well as their own. But they did not worship the strange gods from whom they had no favor to expect, and on whom their gifts and offerings would have been thrown away. Each group had its own god, or perhaps a god and goddess, to whom the other gods bore no relation whatever. The God of the antique society was an exclusive God. God was owned by and bound to one single community. This is largely to be accounted for by the share taken by the gods in the feuds and the wars of their worshippers. The enemies of the God and the enemies of his people are identical. Even in the Old Testament, the enemies of Jehovah are originally nothing else than the enemies of Israel. In the battle, each God fights for his own people, and to his aid, success is ascribed. Chemos gives victory to Moab, and Ashire to Assyria, and often the divine image or symbol accompanies the horse to battle. When the ark was brought into the camp of Israel, the Philistines said, "Gods are coming to the camp. Who can deliver us from their own practice?" For when the David defeated them at Baal Perazim, part of the booty consisted in their idols, which had been carried into the field. When the Carthaginians, in their treaty with Philip of Macedon, speak of the gods that take part in the campaign, they doubtless refer to the inmates of the sacred tent, which was pitched in time of war beside the tent of the general, and before which prisoners were sacrificed after a victory. Similarly, in the Arabic poet says, Yagut went forth with his against Murad. That is the image of the god Yagut was carried into the fray. This fact had produced a solidarity between the god and the community. Hence, on the principle of solidarity between gods and their worshippers, the particularism characteristic of political society could not but reappear in the sphere of religion. In the same measure as a god of a clan or a town had indisputable claim to the reverence and the service of the community to which he belonged, he was necessarily an enemy to their enemies and a stranger to those to whom they were strangers. God had become attached to a community, and the community had become attached to their God. God had become the God of the community, and the community had become the chosen community of the God.
See, actually, this paragraph is so clear that we can almost understand what has gone into the history of the religion, not only in India, but also in the history of the world. You know, like what has happened in the Arab world, what has happened in the Christian world, what has happened in all different places in the world, as to how the gods were fighting with each other, because the gods were humanized. They were part of the human societies. So my God is not the God of my enemies. The God of my enemy is the enemy of my people and my God. And, you know, in the name of the gods, the religious wars were fought. And we have been seeing that history, you know, has been played out in the history of the religious conflicts throughout the world. But here, one of the remarkable things that has been simplified by Baba Saheb Ambedkar in terms of this: God had become attached to a community, and the community had become attached to their God. God had become the God of the community, and the community had become the chosen community of the God, the chosen people. Like the Jews believe that they are the chosen people, they are the chosen people of their God, isn't it? And besides them, nobody is the chosen people of the God. So I think that's very interesting, sort of a brief survey of the religious history that Baba Saheb Ambedkar has provided here in this paragraph, and which we, if there is if there is a clarity, if we all understood, we can move on, or if there is any confusion, we can discuss here. You see, while you study this, you can bear in mind the situation of India as well. You know, there were a lot of tribes, a lot of communities, a lot of natural societies, and all societies had their own gods, and the gods were fighting with each other, and there was a war of gods. You know, so the god was like the member of their own tribe, a member of their own community, and they were the people of their gods, and so on and so forth. And we see that also reflected in the history of the Indian subcontinent. So, for example, the Dalits had their different gods. Then, you know, the so-called other people, they used to worship Mariamma and, you know, like other gods and goddesses. There is a goddess in Tamil Nadu. Venki Bhai might throw more light on that. Amman. So we can see that the communities were divided on the god, on the lines of the gods they worshipped, and the gods governed their social lives and the political lives. All right. All right. Should we go on?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
This view had two consequences. Antique society never came to conceive that God could be universal God, the God of all. Antique society never could conceive that there was any such thing as humanity in general.
Wow.
Beautiful. The third point of difference between ancient and modern society has reference to the conception of the fatherhood of God. In the antique society, God was the father of his people. But the basis of this conception of fatherhood was deemed to be physical. In the heathen religion, the fatherhood of the God is physical fatherhood. Among the Greeks, for example, the idea that a god fashioned men out of clay as potters fashion images is relatively modern. The older conception is that the races of men have gods for their ancestors, or are the children of the earth, the common mother of gods and men, so that men are really of the stock or kin of the gods. That the same conception was familiar to the older Semites appear from the Bible. Jeremiah describes idolaters as saying to a stock, "Thou art my father," and to a stone, "Thou hast brought me forth." In the ancient poem number 29, the Moabites are called the sons and the daughters of Chemosh. And at much more recent date, the prophet Malachi calls a heathen woman the daughters of a strange god. These phrases are doubtless an accommodation to the language which the heathen neighbors of the Israel used about themselves. In Syria and the Palestine, each clan or even complex of clans forming a small, independent people trace back its origin to a great first father. And they indicate that just as in Greece, this father or progenitor of the race was commonly identified with the god of the race. With this, it accords that in the judgment of the most modern inquirers, several names of the deities appear in the old genealogies of the nations in the book of Genesis. Edom, for example, the progenitor of Edomites was identified by the Hebrews with Esau, the brother of Jacob. But heathen he was a god, as appears from the Theophorus, proper name Obidom, worshipper of Edom. The extent of fragments of Phoenician and the Babylonian cosmogonies date from a time when tribal religion and the connection of individual gods with particular kindreds was forgotten or had fallen into the background. But in a generalized form, the notion that men are the offspring of the gods still held its ground. In the Phoenician cosmology of Philobabelius, it does so in a confused shape due to the author's euhemerism. That is to his theory that the deities are nothing more than deified men who had been great benefactors to their species. Again, in the Chaldean legend preserved by Barrius, the belief that men are of the blood of the gods is expressed in a form too crude not to be very ancient. For animals as well as men are said to have been formed out of clay mingled with the blood of decapitated deity. This conception, this conception of a blood kinship of gods and men had one important consequence. To the antique world, God was a human being and as such was not capable of absolute virtue and absolute goodness. God shared the physical nature of man and was afflicted with the passions, infirmities, and vices to which man was subject. The God of antique world had all the wants and appetites of the man. In the vices in which many reveled, worshippers had to implore God not to lead them into temptations.
So I think this paragraphs are self-explanatory, and we can begin to see that how the God in the antique society had become the part of the human societies. They was treated like one among them, and in his name the decisions were taken. In his name, the society was governed, and I think that is very important sort of concept to understand that how the antique society is different from the modern society, how that revolution has caused the rupture between the antique society and the modern society. So it's a self-explanatory as far as we can see as we read on.
Yep.
If there is any comment or anybody would like to say anything, otherwise we will go on. Because most of it is self-explanatory, and
go ahead.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. In modern society, the idea of divine fatherhood has become entirely dissociated from the physical basis of natural fatherhood. In its place, man is conceived to be created in the image of God. He is not deemed to be begotten by God. This change in the conception of the fatherhood of God, looked at from its moral aspect, has made a tremendous difference in the nature of God as a governor of the universe. God, with his physical basis, was not capable of absolute good and absolute virtue. With God wanting in righteousness, the universe could not insist on the righteousness as an immutable principle. This dissociation of God from physical contact with man has made it possible for God to be conceived of as capable of absolute good and absolute virtue.
Very profound point. Very, very profound point. Isn't it? When the God was relative, it was God, when the concept of God was relative to a tribe or to the natural society in which one was born, the revolution has made the God, it has broken this sort of a physical contact between the communities and the God. The God was no longer a father, but the God became universal and the absolute sort of a principle. So the God, as a governor of the universe, had to be capable of absolute good and absolute virtue. So that's what, when we discuss about the concept of God, even in the society, all these arguments come into being that there is somebody who is governing, there is some force that is governing. And on the other hand, we have that, particularly in this country, we are also carrying the antique society in this country, because a lot of the people in India believe in the community gods, in the family gods, and in the clans, in the clan gods, and so on and so forth. And also some people argue in terms of the universal God. Like it is said that the book written by Rajaram Mohan Rai, Gift of Monotheism, which was copied from the concept of the God as one God. Monotheism is about one God, and that kind of a concept was never there in the Brahminical religion, but it was introduced by Rajaram Mohan Rai in terms of the Hindus being the monotheist. Okay, so you see, when you read such kind of writing, it gives you a lot of tools to think through a lot of the arguments that keep on going in the society. So I would look at this text as providing us a lot of thinking tools to think about the idea of God, how it evolved, what was the concept of God in the savage society, what was the concept of God in the antique society, what is the concept of God in the modern society. So if you ask an educated modern man about the God, they won't say that the God belongs to their clan or their family. They say that the God is universal. The God is all powerful. The God is all omnipotent. The God is omniscient. The God has this immense compassion, like that. So this is a very revised concept of a God as far as the modern society is concerned. So that's a revolution in the religious thought that has done away with the old concept of God and brought a new concept of God that we see around today. But as Baba Ambedkar says, that in Indian society, we are living also in the antique society. There is a modern society and also there is an antique society. We are carrying a lot of deadwood of the past in India, even in other societies as well. And our attempt to engage with this sort of writings of Baba Ambedkar is to develop those tools for thinking for ourselves. Okay, there are a lot of thinking tools that has been offered in this book, as we can see now. Go on. If there is nothing, no comments from
even now also, some people say that this is my Kul Devat.
This is my Kul Devat, exactly.
And someone said my Kul Devat is located in such and such area. So there is a distribution among people.
Yes.
God's distribution among people.
Yes.
It's very interesting.
So at one point of time, the God belongs to the Kula.
Yeah.
Isn't it? And if your Kula, if your God and my God is the same, then we can guess that our communities must have been one community at certain point of time.
Yeah.
So
that is that.
Yeah, please go on.
The division of people.
So I remember reading this book, small paper that Baba Ambedkar read on who were Mahars. And there it says that Mahars, and I don't know whether you have read it in the group, but in that paper he says that the Mahars and the Marathas were like the kinfolks because they worship the same Kul Devat.
Yeah. Even that is the reason why the surnames like Jadhav. Jadhav surname is in Mahar as well as in Maratha.
Yes.
Pawar also. Gaikwad.
Yes.
Actually, someone had said that those who are remained as a Mahar, they fought with the governing community.
Yes.
And those who adjusted were elevated.
Right.
Marathas, like that.
Right.
Because of fighting, they got reduced. Means Mahar were always fighting. Whereas Maratha, they adjusted themselves.
Right.
And got themselves elevated.
Right.
This is also a thing.
See, and one of the things about Ashoka that I read, because one of the things that Ashoka did in order to create the equality among the people is to stop the worship of the Kula Devats.
Yeah.
So Ashoka stopped, asked people not to worship their Kul Devat, means not to worship their communal gods, so that they can become one community. Very interesting. Please go on.
Oh, okay.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Fourth point of difference relates to the part religion plays when a change of nationality takes place. In the antique world, there could be no change of nationality unless it was accompanied by a change of religion. In the antique world, it was impossible for an individual to change his religion without changing his nationality. And the whole community could hardly change its religion at all without being absorbed into another stock or nation. Religion, like political ties, were transmitted from father to son. For a man could not choose a new god at all. The gods of his fathers were the only deities on whom he could count as friendly and ready to accept his homage, unless he forbore his own kindred and was received into a new circle of civil as well as religious life. How a change of religion was conditioned precedent to a social fusion is well illustrated by the dialogue between Naomi and the Ruth in the Old Testament. Thy sister, says Naomi to Ruth, is gone back unto her people and unto her gods. And the Ruth replies, thy people shall be my people, and thy God, my God.
Very
it
good.
Is quite, yeah. It is quite clear that in the ancient world, a change of nationality involved a change of cult. A social fusion means religious fusion.
See, these paragraphs are so, if we read them carefully, they provide us even the tools of thinking about what might have gone wrong with Buddhism, what has happened to Buddhism in this country. Because the change of religion is a change of nationality. And in the ancient societies, you cannot change your religion, because, that will denationalize you. So in the ancient society, the religion and the nationality went hand in hand. And that is what is a revolution in the modern society, that they don't go hand in hand. We can belong to any nation and we can practice any religion. But in the ancient societies, in the antiquated societies, that was not the case. In the antique society, that was not the case. I think this is very profound sort of an insight that we have to bear in our mind. As I read this, and as anybody can read it from the research orientation or from the methods to learn certain things, particularly in the area of religion, I think Baba Sahib Ambedkar has been offering a lot of tools for us to think through a lot of things. He's offering those ideas by which the spades by which we can exhume a lot of these debris of the past and understand what might have gone wrong, what might have happened, and why we reached to where we have reached today. Okay, so go on.
One interesting point also mentioned here.
Yes.
The gods were thrust upon the new generation.
Yes.
From father to son.
Yes.
It was thumped on him.
Yes.
It was not open for him to, deny that God.
Yes.
It was compulsory to accept the God of his father.
Yes. Very interesting point.
Very interesting point.
Martin, very interesting point.
Oh.
Yep. Yeah.
Can go ahead.
Yeah. In modern society, abandonment of the religion or acceptance of another is not necessary for a social fusion. This is best illustrated by what is in the modern terminology and naturalization, whereby the citizen of one state abandons his citizenship of the state and becomes a citizen of a new state. In this process of naturalization, and religion has no place. One can have a social fusion, which is another name for naturalization, without undergoing a religious fusion. To distinguish modern society from antique society, it is not enough to say that modern society consists of men only. It must be added that it consists of men who are worshippers of different gods. The fifth point of difference relates to the necessity of knowledge as to the nature of God as part of religion. From the antique point of view, indeed, the question what the gods are themselves is not a religious, but a speculative one. What is requisite to religion is a practical acquaintance with the rules on which deity acts and on which he expects his worshippers to frame their conduct. What in 2 Kings verse 26 is called the manner, or rather the customary law, misfat of the God of the land. This is true even of the religion of Israel. When the prophets speak of the knowledge of the laws and the principle of his government is in Israel, and a summary expression for religion as a whole is the knowledge and the fear of Jehovah. That is the knowledge of what Jehovah describes, combined with a reverent obedience. An extreme skepticism towards all religious speculation is recommended in the book of Civilized as the proper attitude of piety, for no amount of discussion can carry a man beyond the plain rule to fear God and keep his commandments. This counsel the author puts into the mouth of Solomon and so represents it no unjustly as summing up the old view of religion, which in the more modern days had unfortunately begun to be undermined.
Good. Go on, please.
Yeah. The sixth point of difference relates to the place of belief in religion. In ancient society, ritual and practical usages were, strictly speaking, the sum total of ancient religions. Religion in primitive times was not a system of belief, practical applications. It was a body of fixed traditional practices to which every member of society conformed as a matter of courage. Men would not be men if they agreed to do certain things without having a reason for their action. But in ancient religion, the reason was not first formulated as a doctrine and then expressed in practice, but conversely, practice preceded doctrinal theory. Men from general rule of conduct, before they begin to express general principles in words, political institutions are older than political theories. And in like manner, religious institutions are older than the religious theories. This analogy is not arbitrarily chosen. For in fact, the parallelism in the ancient society between religious and the political institution is complete. In each sphere, the great importance was attached to form and precedent, but the explanation why the precedent was followed consisted merely of a legend as to its first establishment. That the precedent, once established, was authoritative did not appear to require any proof. The rules of society were based on precedent, and the continued existence of society was sufficient reason why a precedent once set should continue to be followed. The seventh point of difference relates to the place of individual conviction in religion. In ancient society, religion was a part of the organized social life into which a man was born and to which he conformed in the same unconscious way in which men fall into any habitual practice of the society in which they live. Men took the gods and their worship for granted, just as they took the other usages of the state for granted. And if they reasoned or speculated about them, they did so on the presupposition that the traditional usages were fixed things, behind which the reasonings must not go, and which no reasonings could be allowed to overturn. To us, modern religion is above all a matter of individual conviction and a reasoned belief. But to the ancient, it was a part of citizens' public life, reduced to fixed forms, which he was not bound to understand and was not at liberty to criticize or to neglect. Religious nonconformity was an offense against the state. For if sacred tradition was tampered with, the basis of society were undermined and the favor of the gods were forfeited. But so long as the prescribed forms were duly observed, a man was recognized as truly pious. And no one asked how his religion was rooted in his heart or affected his reason. Like political duty, of which indeed it was a part, religion was entirely comprehended in the observance of the certain fixed rules of outward conduct.
Go on.
The eighth point of difference pertains to the relations of God to society and a man, of society to man in the matter of God's providence. First, as to the difference in the relation of God to society. In this connection, be noted, the faith of antique world sought nothing higher than a condition of physical being attracted. The good things desired of the gods were the blessings of earthly life, and not spiritual but carnal things. What the antique societies asked and believed themselves to receive from their God lay mainly in the following things: abundant harvest, help against their enemies, and counsel by oracles or soothsayers in the matters of natural difficulty. In the antique world, religion was not the affair of the individual, but of the community. It was a community and not the individual that was sure of the permanent and the unfailing hand of the deity. Next, as to the difference in the relation of God to man. It was not a business of the gods of heathenism to by a series of special providences or the welfare of every individual. It is true that the individuals laid their private affairs before the gods and asked with prayers and views for strictly personal blessings. But they did this just as they might crave a personal boon from a king, or as a son craves a boon from a father, without expecting to get all that was asked. What the gods might do in this way was done as a matter of personal favor and was no part of their proper functions as heads of the community. The gods watched over a man's civic life. They gave him his share in public benefits, the annual largesse of the harvest and the vintage, national peace or victory over enemies, and so forth. But they were not sure helpers in every private need. And above all, they would not help him in matters that were against the interests of the community. There was therefore a whole region of possible needs and desires for which religion could and would do nothing. Next, the difference in the attitude of God and society to man. In the antique world, society was indifferent to individual welfare. God was no doubt bound to society, but the compact between the God and his worshippers was not held to place the deity, to make the private case of each member of the community his own. The benefits expected of God were of public character, affecting the whole community, especially fruitful seasons, increase of flocks of herds, and success in war. So long as community flourished, the fact that an individual was miserable reflected no discredit on divine providence. On the contrary, the antique world looked upon the misery of a man as a proof that the sufferer was an evildoer, justly hateful to the gods. Such a man was out of place among the happy and prosperous crowd that assembled on feast days before the altar. It is in accordance with this view that the leper and the mourner were shut out from the exercise of religion as well as from the privileges of the social life, and their food was not brought into the house of God. As for conflict between individual and between society and the individual, God had no concern. In the antique world, it was not expected that God should always be busy writing human affairs. In ordinary matter, it was men's business to help themselves and their own kinsfolk. Though the senses that God was always near and could be called upon at need was a moral force continually working in some degree for the maintenance of social righteousness and order. The strength of this moral force was indeed very uncertain, for it was always possible for the evildoer to flatter himself that his offense would be overlooked. In the antique world, man did not ask God to be righteous to him. Whether in civil or in profane matters, the habit of the old world was to think much of the community and a little of the individual life. And no one felt this to be the unjust, even though it bore hardly on himself. The God was a God of national or of the tribe, and he knew and cared for the individual only as a member of the community. That was the attitude that man in the antique world took of his own private misfortune. Man come to rejoice before his God, and in rejoicing before his God, man rejoiced with and for the welfare of his kindred, his neighbors, and his country, and in renewing by the solemn act of worship the bond that united him to God. He also renewed the bonds of family, social, and national obligation. Man in the antique world did not call upon his maker to be righteous to him. Such is this other revolution in religion.
Very good. I think we take a pause for today here, because there is a sort of clarity over the what is Baba Saheb Ambedkar calling it as the internal revolution that took place within the religion, from the savage society to the civilized society. And the civilized society, Baba Saheb Ambedkar had talked about the two societies, the antique society and the modern society. And then he has given us the points of comparison between the antique society and modern society. And they are remarkably revolutionary. The changes that has taken place when the antiquated society, antique society has become the modern society, the kind of changes that have taken place, in particular in the concept of God, in the relationship of man with God. It was not an individual relation, but the God was related to the community. The God was communal, and the community belonged to certain gods. And, taking this thread further, Baba Saheb Ambedkar has, talked about that the God, the individual has nothing to do with the God of the community. So for his personal misfortune, the God didn't come into play. But for the community, for the good harvest, for the good season, for the success in war, the God was invoked as one among them. And I think this internal revolution that has taken place within the religion, and Baba Saheb Ambedkar has also already talked about the external revolution. And we have seen that Baba Saheb Ambedkar has used this method of inquiry, by talking about the revolutions that have taken place in the religion. I think that's a very fundamental sort of a thing. I was talking to you about the thinking tools that Baba Saheb Ambedkar had tried to develop here. And we can find a lot of these tools which can aid us to think about even the complex religious problems today. And we can immediately talk about, for example, when we talk about this country where we are, the concept of naturalization of citizen is now being challenged by the citizenship belonging to a particular religion. And by virtue of that, the people belonging to other religion, they are not treated as, the equal citizens of this country. And we see that, the communal gods are invoked, and the politics is fused with the communal gods. And we can see that, the gods are belonging to different communities. For the Yadav, there is a certain caste. The Kshatriyas, so-called Kshatriyas, will invoke certain gods, and so on and so forth. So we see that, the current situation, as far as our country is concerned, it has become the hodgepodge of this antique society and the so-called modern society. And I think this particular discussion that Baba Saheb Ambedkar has narrated in these last 10 pages is so helpful to us even today to make sense of a lot of things. And what kind of the norms, what kind of the belief system that is governing the people of India today, and how that has a potential to create those breaks, those fractures in what we can say our country. And I think this is a sort of, this gives us a mirror to think about the current situation of our country even today. So I think we can go on reading. We have come to the 21 pages. We have finished the 10 pages for today. And I think this discussion that Baba Saheb Ambedkar had, it looks very complex and very, I would say, not interesting. But if you look at it from the canvas of understanding religions, and religion being such a potent sort of an element in all the lives, if we can begin to see the religions in these terms, in terms of the history of religions, how the religion was challenged internally and externally, and where are we in terms of these different revolutions that have taken place in the religion, and from that we can come to a position by which we can understand any society in a better manner. So I think this order to read this thoroughly is very important for all of us to really make sense of what is happening today in the society and in the community and in our country and in other countries. I think this discussion is so important. And the tool that Baba Saheb Ambedkar has brought in to as a method of inquiry into the religion, and he has already spoken of the external revolution in terms of the Darwinian and Copernican revolution that has challenged the very ideas and the concepts of religion when the empire of religion was governing everything, and how this external revolution has challenged that. And then when Baba Saheb Ambedkar is talking about the internal revolutions which have happened within the religions, for example, in the savage society, there was no God, and the rituals and the magic and the rites and all those things were taking place as a life-preserving sort of activities. They were meant for the life and the life preservation. And when it came to the civilized society, the God entered into being, and the God also conceptually has changed. So in a way, Baba Saheb Ambedkar has also offered us the history of God, as to how the concept of God has evolved, what kind of the history of the idea of the concept of God, the history of idea of God, I would say. In a very few pages, Baba Saheb Ambedkar has gone into this history of idea of God. And we are today, even we claim that we are in the modern society, but a lot of people live in those antiquated religions, in those antiquated religious system, and in the antiquated, they believe in the antiquated gods, which has no relevance for today. But because they are so much intermingled with their life processes. For example, the tribal gods or the native gods are invoked during the birth ceremony, during the death ceremony, during the marriages, and during whatnot. So these, for example, in India, these gods are invoked in the when the child is born, when the marriage takes place. All these rites are religious rites. They are not secular rites. They are not secular ceremonies. And what we should aim at, these ceremonies like marriage and all, they are controlled by religion, and therefore they are not secular. They are not they are not human. They are very limited and very tribalistic in their nature. And that's how the religion, even in India today, governs the lives of so many people and divides the people. Even we cannot say that the Hindu religion is one religion, because within that religion there are many gods, there are many rituals, there are many ceremonies that are very much opposed to each other and very different from each other. So for example, in the Indian history, there was a fight between the Shaivites and the Vaishnavites. A big violent battles have taken place between them. So we see, this 10 pages looks very deep and dense. But once we start, unpacking them, once we start seeing them through the analysis, we begin to see the new light beneath those words. And that light can be our guide to understand the present society in a better way, particularly Indian society in a better way. So that was my comment, and we can open up for discussion for another 10 minutes before we conclude.
Things mentioned in this portion are related to present day governing class of our country.
Very much so, sir.
They are trying to invoke the practices of antique society, I feel.
Yeah. In India, as Baba Saheb Ambedkar said, that the past has become the rival of the present.
Yeah.
Okay, the past has become the rival of the present. We are still carrying the past, which is not still today. With the world is moving, the humanity is moving in a direction which has nothing to do with this tribalistic mentality and the tribal gods and goddesses. But still, we see, where we are.
This caste verification committee, they have a pro forma. In that, they have mentioned which god you were worshipping, your forefathers were worshipping.
Wow.
So that also is a clear testimony of what is in store.
Yeah. See, this is very pathetic. This gives us a lot of clarity. Yeah.
But it is an eye opener also.
Yes.
For us.
Yes. So anybody else who would like to share or just comment or reflect on what we have just read today?
Brother, I have to say something here.
Please go on.
Throughout the reading, one thing is very common. God is inseparable from the thinking. What I mean is, there are people who believe Godfather as a God. There are people who believe some supernatural God. There are people who say we don't believe in God. So this concept of God is purely psychological concept.
Exactly.
It is inseparable. People, those don't believe in God, will say, I don't believe in God, but God will always remain there in talk, in discussion, and in worship also, definitely. So I think it is all psychological, the notion, the language, the way we think, that has to be changed with the concept, saying there is no God as such. See, I remember as a student, we went in the discussion of God, So one very natural answer came. The answer was like the concept of God is given to the thing which doesn't go to conclusion. Things doesn't go to conclusion is named as a God.
Right.
God is there. That is the stupidity. What I'm saying. I don't know whether I'm putting in the right words or not, but this is purely psychological. You hate God or you love God, but still God is there. This word has to be taken out from brain of everyone.
Yeah.
Now you see, you said hodgepodge of society. How the society, this you are talking about India, but outside world, how it is? It is the money which is governing. The money, if you have more money, you may belong to any god, you may belong to any religion. You come under one umbrella. For example, you come under one society with different nationality, with different religion. You stay with oneness, you stay with neighbor to each other. Right. So where is the concept of God here?
Yes.
So this psychological change has to come in everyone's thinking.
Yeah, very true, Pankaj Bhai. I think there are a lot of research material which are available, studies available as to the psychology of a religion. And according to that, I think the most important thing is that the human beings find themselves very helpless because the people around them die, and they get diseases, and they are scared. Like in the ancient times, people were worried about the snake bite, eaten by a lion or a tiger, or burnt in the fire, or drawn in the water, like that. So basically, we had this concept that somebody will protect. And there is a concept of father, the father being the head of the family as a protector, mother being the kind person who will protect us. So there are frames in mind, human minds, about this dependability, dependence on the fatherhood or the motherhood. And then we see that that has turned into the concept of God. Yes. Isn't it? And this has given rise to two concepts where people believe that the locus of their control lies outside. So there are people who believe that the outside forces control their destiny, and there are people who believe that the locus of control lies inside. Isn't it? So like when Baba Ambedkar converted to Buddhism, or when Baba Ambedkar denounced these ideas of God, the 22 vows are not just about Hindu religion, they are very deep psychologically. So when we take these 22 vows, particularly the first 3 and 4 vows of the 22 vows, we begin to believe onto ourselves, and we do not submit to the external control over our destiny. We take our destiny in our own hands. In other words, as Baba Ambedkar said, Ata Deepa Bhav, be your own light.
True.
There is nobody out there who is going to change your fate. There is no God who is going to remove you from the suffering. You yourself has to respond. You yourself has to come out of it by making your own efforts. So I think what you said is a human psychology of dependability, on being dependent on somebody, feeling helpless in the situations which are very threatening for us. And that's why we see that we invoke a powerful agency that they will come and save us. But if we understand that there is no God, the world has evolved as Darwin has proved, and that even in the wave of life, the human beings are just one species among many species, and we are all caught up in a wave of life. We are not special. And And if we have this kind of a thinking, then what begins to happen is that we begin to take the control of the situation ourselves.
True.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
So anything else?
The faith plays a very important role in the life of man. I had heard the interview of KM Hospital's dean. He was telling that early in the morning, he prayed to the God that his operations should be successful. And he said that something is beyond technique or technology. So
why he's there? If something, he just let you. That's a Gandhian concept. Let the people die. Why there should be hospitals? People suffer because of their karma. Let people go through that suffering because it's their karma, and like that. It's the same thing. So why are you a doctor?
No, he wanted that God should help him in performing operation.
Yeah.
Successful operation.
Right.
But such psychological thinking.
That is the faith. No, that is the faith, because that is thumped on him by his forefathers or his community, we can say, or his family.
Yeah. True.
And according to that, his mindset has taken form.
Right.
Sir, adding to the Pankaj Bhai points, Pankaj Bhai said that definitely the outside world is governed by the economy, outside world is governed by the money, and there is no importance for them to have any place to the God or religion. And Baba Sahib clearly said that in a modern society has eliminated God from its composition. It consists of men only. So far, I'm in Sweden and since last couple of years, and I observed that Swedes, all the Swedish people are so much pragmatic. They have no place at all to the God or any supernatural power. And there are like a lot of churches out there here in Sweden, but hardly anyone goes to the churches, so they don't believe at all to the any concept of God. But in that perspective, there are so much believes in technology, they believes in scientific thinking. But if I talk about moral view, if I talk about the way we need to lead the life on its own terms, somewhere I can say the Swedes people are somewhere like there is no such guidance on how the life should be led. And when I compare with our Buddhism, that we have the way of life, how we can live the moral life, so there is a guidance, there is a standard that we have, and we are like studying the philosophy of this religion in this book. But if I compare with the modern world or maybe the outside world, there is no such philosophy to live the life in a moral way. And they are like getting I can say addicted to the technology. They are getting attached themselves to all the external things, all the materialistic thing rather, but they don't have the spiritual thing that I have, certain kind of a standard in my life, a certain philosophy in my life to lead. So that's when most of the people here on are like living isolated, living lonely. They get trapped in depression and isolation, and they don't have a way to come out. Only thing is that they like go to the medical and take the pills, and they hope that they will come out of that depression or maybe isolation. But somewhere I can say that extreme practicality, extreme pragmatism doesn't help. We need some philosophy, we need some guidance, and that guidance definitely can be brought out by believing in our values, believing in ourselves. You rightly said that Attadipa Bhava, that is the one way, and it's a fantastic way to lead us from the liberation. Yeah.
Good point.
Great.
So I think we are reaching to the end of our class today, and I think we have covered a lot of difficult area, and the rest of the text is very smooth sailing, because we have already had covered a very difficult part of it. And the next 60 pages are going to be the feast to our brains and to our minds to understand. As I said, that we have to read Baba Sahib's writings and speeches in terms of finding out those tools of thinking to really sharpen our minds and our brains to understand anything, everything in the world. And this text is not exceptional. This text is in the line of how Baba Ambedkar tries to nurture our thinking and tries to help us to see things for ourselves instead of believing in somebody's writing or believing in what somebody is saying. And this is also remarkable about this text, that religion is a very complex subject. It's a very complex idea, and there are so many religions, so many fights over religions. There is a conflict everywhere on the basis of religion, and people cling on to those ideas. And when that's how I appreciate Baba Sahib's view of Buddhism, because he has given us something which do not have the trappings of the past, the strings attached to it. It's very humanizing sort of a force in Baba Sahib Ambedkar's scheme of Buddhism. It's not, there is no scope for God, there is no scope for anything that is not relevant to the welfare of the humanity, and so on and so forth. I think this is very remarkable, and understanding that we can gain by reading this, and we will continue to do that. So should we stop today? If there is nothing on your minds at the moment, should we stop it today?
Yes, sir.
We can stop, but
Yes,
what
sir.
I want to make one suggestion.
Yes.
That before beginning the next lecture, we can recapitulate the things we have covered.
So it's a good point, Mahasinji. What we will do, we begin the next topic tomorrow, next time, with your 5 minutes summary of what has gone. Okay?
Yeah. So the people will be able to comprehend the things in
and
proper.
I would recommend if you can make a PPT for 6-7 minutes, because there is a scope for making these beautiful charts and the mind maps of this text. So if you can make a small 5 to 10 minutes PowerPoint.
I'm very poor in this respect.
Maybe somebody can help you.
I will ask my daughter, because she is a computer science student.
Very good, very good.
So let me check with her.
And
if possible, I'll prepare.
If you can do it, then it will be good for other people also to understand the text.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mahasinji.
By doing this, so one will enrich his knowledge.
Exactly. So thank you so much, Mahasinji, and thank you all.
Thank you.
And Nikhil, should we end the class today?
Yes, sir. I'm pausing the recording.
Okay, Nikhil. Thank you so much. Bye, Jai Bhim.
Jai Bhim. Thank you so much. Jai Bhim.